What if a tiny fish, just by, touching it, could stop a massive ship dead in the water?
Right.
Or what if a drum made from wolf skin could just automatically silence one made from lamb skin just by being nearby?
Yeah, these sympathetic, antipathetic reactions.
Exactly. And what if, like, ancient texts actually held the keys to influencing reality itself, curing sickness, predicting the future, all just by understanding these hidden connections between things?
Well, that's pretty much what we're diving into today. We're exploring this really extraordinary historical text that tries to map out precisely those kinds of hidden links and, frankly, surprising powers believed to exist within the natural world.
Yeah, connecting everything from, like, a simple stone right up to the stars.
Absolutely.
Our source material for this deep dive is Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's huge work, 3 books of occult philosophy. And we're really zooming in on excerpts from book 1.
Right, the book on natural magic.
Exactly. This is where he lays out his foundational ideas for it. And for him, natural magic wasn't about, stage illusions or anything. It was about applying deep knowledge of the natural world's secret properties and these inherent correspondences he saw everywhere.
Mm-hmm. So our mission, really, is to unpack the core ideas that are in these specific excerpts you shared. We want to really try and understand Agrippa's framework for how he thought the universe worked.
Yeah.
And explore these, often really astonishing virtues he attributes to natural things, and then look at the method that he actually describes for supposedly tapping into these powers.
Right. And it's super important to keep in mind we're exploring what this document claims, okay, and the worldview it represents.
Definitely not an endorsement.
No, not at all. These ideas are from a totally different time, a philosophical context that's just miles away from modern science. But wow, it gives you this fascinating, sometimes really bizarre look into how people once tried to, like, codify the hidden workings of the universe.
Yeah, the language is old, the ideas can be dense, but the details are, well, they're wild.
They really are. So let's unpack this.
Okay, so Agrippa kicks things off by outlining this really grand philosophical structure for the universe. He describes it in multiple interconnected levels. Think of it like a vast cosmic hierarchy.
Okay.
And it all flows down from what he calls the original maker.
Right, the source. So a hierarchy.
Yeah.
What are these levels he talks about in the source?
He lays out 4 main levels, basically a descent from the top. At the very peak, you've got the exemplary world.
Exemplary world.
Yeah, this is where the pure, simple ideas exist within God. It's like the realm of divine archetypes, perfect unity in form.
Okay, so like the perfect blueprints, the original concepts in God's mind, simple, singular.
Exactly, perfectly put. Then, coming down from that, you have the intellectual world. This is the realm of what he calls intelligencies, or sometimes the soul of the world. Now here, those simple ideas from the exemplary world start to get, well, distinguished. They take on many forms, what he calls seminal forms. Still really powerful, but not that simple unity anymore, more differentiated.
So the divine concept gets translated into sort of more detailed, distinct blueprints, like moving from the idea to the specific plan.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. Then from that intellectual world, we step down again into the celestial world.
The heavens, the stars.
Right, heavens and stars. This is where the virtues, the specific powers, and the distinct shapes and properties really start to manifest more concretely. Still in a pure, sort of energetic form, though.
Okay.
And finally, at the bottom of this chain, you have the corporeal world. That's us, our physical reality.
The world of inferior bodies.
Exactly, characterized by, as he puts it, gross forms and the 4 elements we know.
Okay, so this chain, descending from pure divine ideas through intellectual patterns, celestial energies, right down to the tangible elemental world we live in. How do these levels interact? Is it just a stack or is there connection?
Oh, it definitely not just a stack. This is where one of his absolute core principles comes in, the idea that all things are in all.
All things are in all, okay.
Yeah. What he means is that everything in the lower world, especially our physical world, our inferior bodies, is an exemplification of those superior ideas. Everything here on Earth receives influence, energy, virtues directly from those celestial and intellectual realms above it.
So it's like our world is a living reflection, maybe, or a direct recipient of energy from higher planes.
It's more active than just a reflection, actually. There's this dynamic causal link he calls the band and continuity of nature.
Right, the band of nature.
That's the key mechanism, you see. It's the channel that virtue or influence flows through continuously from the first cause, God, all the way down this chain of being. He uses this really great analogy. It's like a certain string stretched out from the highest point of reality right down to the lowest.
Oh, that's a powerful image. Like touching one end vibrates the whole thing instantly.
Exactly. And he gives another one, too. He says the universe is like a perfectly tuned lute.
Okay.
Motion in the lower parts, the inferior, can actually move the corresponding superior parts they're linked to. The lower responds to its higher connection in the chain.
Wow. So understanding this multi-level interconnected universe isn't just like abstract philosophy for Agrippa. It's the absolute bedrock of his natural magic. Why is getting this structure so vital for someone trying to practice what he describes?
Oh, it's completely fundamental. If you don't grasp this model, you literally cannot understand why he believes certain natural things have these specific, often really startling powers.
Right.
Their power isn't just in the material itself. It comes from their specific place in this cosmic chain and their direct correspondence to higher influences. It explains why things like the positions of stars and planets' celestial timings aren't just, optional extras. They're essential.
Because you're trying to align with that specific flow of influence.
Precisely. You aren't just using a physical plant or a stone based on its earthly properties alone. In theory, you're tapping into the divine idea and the celestial power that it embodies and channels down through that string we talked about.
That's fascinating. So the physical world is almost like the visible tip of a much larger energetic iceberg, this vast network. And Agrippa's occult philosophy is trying to give you the map, the instructions to work within that network.
That's a great way to put it. And within this physical corporeal world, the absolute foundational building blocks, as Agrippa and the ancient sources he uses understood them, are the elements.
The classic four: fire, earth, air, and water. He kicks off by quoting Virgil and Hermes, right? Saying fire and earth alone are enough for wonderful things.
Yes. Hermes apparently called fire the active principle and earth the passive one, the fundamental dynamic duo at this level. But Agrippa, he really dives deep into the nature and virtues of each element, pulling from figures like Dionysius and Pliny.
Okay, let's start with fire. What's his take on it? What attributes does he give it?
Well, according to these sources he cites, fire is described as being simultaneously in all things and through all things. It's both bright, visible, and also deeply hidden, occult. It's boundless, invisible, yet sufficient, always moving, renewing. It guards nature. It enlightens.
Sounds pretty vital.
But Pliny apparently also called it the boundless and mischievous part of the nature of things, even questioning if it destroys more than it produces.
That duality again, creation and destruction wrapped up in one element?
Exactly. It's described as being one thing in itself, but appearing manifold in receivers. Its effects change depending on what it touches or inhabits. Agrippa makes a distinction between fire above the celestial kind, which brings fruitful heat and life-giving light, and what he calls infernal fire.
Infernal fire.
Yeah, characterized by parching, consuming heat, and barren darkness.
So where does our regular everyday fire fit in? Like a campfire or a candle flame?
He says our common fire has an analogy with that superior celestial light. And this is why, he claims, it can drive away spirits of darkness.
Ooh.
Because it acts as a vehiculum of that superior light. It's like a little conduit, a carrier for that divine fire flowing down from the Father of Lights. Suddenly, your fireplace isn't just for warmth. It has these cosmic implications.
That's a really different way to think about fire, isn't it? Okay, what about water? The source gives this incredibly long, almost a bewildering list of claims about water's properties.
It really does. He pulls from Pliny, Solinus, Ovid, Josephus, all talking about the wonders of water, way beyond just, putting out fires or making plants grow. This section is a perfect example of how Agrippa gathered all these specific, often localized claims about strange natural phenomena to back up his bigger ideas about hidden virtues existing everywhere.
Okay, hit me with some of these specific, stranger examples. They sounded pretty wild.
Oh, they are. The list is incredibly specific. Ovid, for instance, apparently mentioned the waters of Horn Hammon cold at noon, but hot at sunrise and sunset.
Weird.
Then there's a stream called Ethemus that supposedly sets wood on fire when it touches it. Zirconian streams are said to turn your guts to stone if you drink from them.
Turn your guts to stone. Yikes.
Right. The rivers Crathus and Sybaris are claimed to color your hair gold. A place called Salmacis is just noted as being obscene, whatever that implies. An Ethiopian lake supposedly causes madness or deep sleep.
Madness from a lake.
Then you've got the Clitorius fountain, said to make you hate wine, while water from Lynkestis causes drunkenness. The Phineas Lake is described as unwholesome by night, but perfectly fine by day.
These sound like ancient travel warnings or folklore more than philosophy. What about that river Josephus described, the one tied to the Sabbath?
Ah, yes. Josephus recounts this river, somewhere between Arcia and Raphania, that exhibits this truly bizarre behavior. It runs full of water only on the Sabbath day.
Only on the Sabbath.
Yeah, the other 6 days of the week, it's completely dry. And the source explicitly points out that the river was actually called the Sabbath Day River because of this very phenomenon.
A river that observes the Sabbath, that is something else. And he mentions the gospel, too, the pool in Jerusalem.
Yes, the text cites the gospel story of the sheep pool in Jerusalem, where the belief was that the first person into the water after an angel troubled it would be healed of whatever disease they had.
Okay.
He also mentions a Greek spring near Heraclea, associated with the Ionian nymphs, that was famous for curing diseases.
Right.
And he draws on Pausanias, describing this ritual at the Agria spring on Mount Lycaeus in Arcadia. The priest of Jupiter would apparently stir the spring with an oak branch, which caused a vapor to rise up and dissolve into rain, watering the whole country during droughts.
So water isn't just, H2O in this view. Its power, its properties are incredibly specific, tied to location, context, maybe even ritual action. It's a much more dynamic, mysterious substance.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the third element, air.
The source calls air a vital spirit, not just empty space.
Exactly. It's seen as this vital, active force that passes through everything, gives life, binds things together, moves things, fills everything. He notes that Hebrew doctors didn't even consider it a mere element, but more like a medium or glue.
A glue.
Yeah, or the resounding spirit of the world's instrument.
A medium for what, though? What's it gluing together?
Primarily, it's the main conduit for receiving those celestial influences directly from above and then communicating them down to the other grosser elements and all the physical things made from them. But this is where Agrippa presents some of the most truly mind-bending claims about air.
Okay, I'm raced.
He claims that the air receives what he calls species. Think of these as like intangible images or similitudes or forms of all things, both natural and artificial. And get this, even all speeches.
Wait, speeches, like words spoken.
That's the claim. The air supposedly retains these species, these forms, and can then impress them upon humans, whether we're asleep or awake, by entering through our pores.
Hold on. Are you saying he claims the air literally holds a recording, an image of everything that's ever happened or been said, like some kind of, atmospheric hard drive?
That is exactly the claim presented in the source material. And he uses this concept to explain all sorts of things. For instance, that feeling of dread or fear you might get when passing a place where a murder happened.
Yeah.
That's explained because the air in that place is supposedly still full of the dreadful species of manslaughter.
Yeah.
You breathe that air in, and it troubles your own spirit with those same leftover species.
Wow. That's an incredible, almost poetic explanation for sensing a place's history or atmosphere.
And it goes further. This is also given as the cause of dreams and other mental impressions, even divinations. The air prolongs these species, presenting them to our senses, our imagination or fantasy, and even our soul, especially when the soul is quiet, freed from cares, or maybe actively expecting to receive such impressions.
Okay, this is going way beyond just carrying general celestial influence. This is about carrying specific information, images, sensory data.
Oh, it gets even stranger. It ventures into what sounds remarkably like ancient claims of remote communication.
Seriously.
The source claims it's naturally possible, without involving any spirits or anything supernatural, for one person to signify their thoughts to another person at a great distance, provided it's within a 24-hour window, because the air itself carries these species of thought.
Mental telegraphy via the air within 24 hours. Naturally. That's a truly extraordinary claim to find presented as just a fact of nature.
It is. Agrippa even claims personal knowledge of this art and mentions that the famous Abbot Trithemius also knew how to do it.
Wow. Okay.
He cites Plotinus as supporting the idea that appearances, both natural and spiritual, emanate out from things, gather strength in the air, and can then work wonders through light and motion. Agrippa also describes the air acting like a kind of mirror under certain conditions.
A mirror in the air. How does that work?
He says the south wind can sometimes condense the air into these thin clouds that become capable of reflecting distant images. You might see sights like castles, mountains, horses, men appearing in the air, which then vanish as the clouds dissipate. He also notes, citing Aristotle's meteors, that rainbows are essentially reflections happening in a cloud of air.
So air in this view is not just a passive medium for life and influence, but this incredibly complex substance that captures, retains, communicates, and even reflects information and images. It's a far more active player in reality than we usually think.
Absolutely. Now, while we mainly interact with these elements, fire, water, air, earth, down here in what he calls their gross matter, the source is clear that they also exist in much purer, more excellent forms higher up.
Higher up where?
In the heavens, in the stars, among devils, angels, and even, he claims, within God himself.
Elements existing in angels and even God. That really connects the elemental right up to the divine, doesn't it?
It does. He says celestial earth is firm, but doesn't have the grossness of our earth mixed with water. Celestial fire shines brightly, but doesn't burn like ours, and so on. Stars are explicitly linked to elements. Mars and the sun are fiery, Jupiter and Venus are airy, Saturn and Mercury are watery, and the moon and the eighth orb, the sphere of fixed stars, are earthy.
Okay.
The signs of the zodiac are also elemental, grouped into threes. Fire signs are Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. Earth signs are Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn. Air signs are Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. And water signs are Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, each group representing the beginning, middle, and end of that elemental quality.
So the elemental properties are woven throughout the whole astrological system.
And he even goes so far as to distinguish different orders of devils and angels by their elemental association. Seraphim are fiery, cherubim earthy, thrones and archangels watery, dominions and principalities airy. And yes, citing scripture, he points out how God is described using elemental terms. Earth shall he open and bring forth a savior. God is a fountain of living water, the spirit breathing, and God is a consuming fire.
Wow. So elements are truly foundational principles running through every single level of Agrippa's universe, from the mud beneath our feet right up to the highest divinity.
That's the picture he paints.
All right, that sets the stage beautifully. We have this multi-layered universe, the elements as building blocks within it. Now, how do these elements and the things made from them actually do things? The source talks about different kinds of virtues, right?
Yes, Agrippa lays out three main kinds of natural virtues, mostly in chapters 9 and X. He calls them elementary, compounded, and occult.
Elementary virtues sound like the most basic ones, the direct effects of the elements.
Exactly. These come straight from the simple qualities of the elements themselves, the power to heat something, cool it, make it moist, or make it dry. He calls these the first qualities of the second act, and they're unique because they can wholly change the whole substance of something they act upon.
Okay. And compounded virtues are, I guess, a step up in complexity.
Yes. These come from mixtures of the elements. They're more than first qualities. They involve more complex operations like maturating, ripening things, digesting, resolving or breaking things down, hardening, softening, things like that. These are called secondary qualities, and their effect depends on the specific proportion of the elements mixed together.
Makes sense.
The source also briefly mentions third qualities, which are even more specific, acting only on particular body parts, like something that provokes urine or stimulates milk production.
Okay, so basic physical effects from the elements, more complex ones from their combinations. What makes the occult virtues so different? Why are they so mysterious?
These are the really enigmatic ones. Their cause, Agrippa says, lie hid. They don't come from the elemental qualities, hot, cold, moist, dry, or any simple combination. Their causes are fundamentally unknown to man's intellect. You can't figure them out just by reasoning or analyzing the components.
So how do you discover them then?
Through long experience, rather than by the search of reason. Basically, trial and error, observation over time, not logical deduction.
Got it. What defines them?
Their key characteristics are that a very small quantity can have a great efficacy, unlike elementary virtues, which need a lot of material to have a big effect. They possess, as he puts it, much form and little matter.
More essence, less substance.
Exactly. He uses digestion in the stomach as an example again. He says it's not just the heat doing the work, there's also a certain hidden virtue, which we know not, playing a crucial role.
A hidden, unknown power driving biological processes.
Yes. He calls them inbred virtues created by nature, which we admire and are amazed at. These are basically the natural wonders that seem to just defy conventional explanation based on simple elements.
Okay, give me some of the specific examples of these occult virtues mentioned in the source. Some of them sounded absolutely incredible, almost unbelievable.
They certainly stretch modern credulity, but he presents them as observed natural facts. Beyond things like expelling poison or a lodestone attracting iron, the source mentions the legendary phoenix bird renewing itself from ashes,
Right.
Matreus's beast, which supposedly devours itself. And he even brings up claims of fishes being dug out of the earth, citing Aristotle, Theophrastus, and Polybius as sources for this.
Fishes appearing out of the ground. That's unexpected.
Isn't it? He also mentions singing stones, citing Pausanias. The ostrich gets a mention for its supposed ability to digest iron, being described as inherently cold and most hard. Its stomach supposedly can't even be hurt by red-hot iron.
The ostrich thing is always so specific and strange. But what about that little fish you mentioned right at the start, the one that stops ships?
Ah, the Echinus. Yes. The source claims this tiny fish doth so curb the violence of the winds and appease the rage of the sea. It doth notwithstanding by its mere touch stay the ships and makes them stand still.
Just by touching the ship, not by anchoring it or anything physical, just a pure innate power.
That's the claim, an occult virtue inherent in the fish itself. Similarly, he mentions salamanders and crickets that supposedly live quite happily in fire they seem to burn, but are actually unharmed. Bitumen is given as an example of a substance with an occult virtue that makes weapons or wood fireproof. He cites accounts of the Amazons using it, Alexander the Great's skates being treated with it, and even, remarkably, Noah's Ark being coated in it.
Noah's Ark was fireproof, according to this text. That's a detail you definitely don't hear every day.
Right. And there's mention of a type of flax called asbestum, or asbestos as we know it, that isn't consumed by fire, and also claims about certain confections or preparations that allow people's hands to carry red-hot iron or even walk into fire without getting hurt. These are all presented as concrete examples of these deep, hidden, occult virtues that are just part of nature, discoverable only through experience.
That's a truly mind-boggling collection of claimed natural powers. Okay, so we have the structure of the universe, the elements, these different kinds of virtues, especially these mysterious occult ones. The next big question is, how do you actually use this knowledge? How do you tap into these specific powers Agrippa describes?
Right. This brings us right back to that principle of correspondence and the flow of influence we talked about earlier. It's elaborated in chapter 37. Inferior things in our physical world, get their virtues from the superior realms, the celestial bodies, the intelligences, and this happens through the soul of the world and that continuity of nature.
Okay.
This flow of influence is also sometimes called the quintessence, or the spirit of the world, or the middle nature. It's the medium.
So the power originates higher up, flows down through the spirit or quintessence, and the goal is to somehow attract or draw that power to yourself or into a specific object.
That's precisely it. Agrippa's method is basically this. First, you identify and use things that are belonging to this star, meaning things that are conformable to the same idea and star up in the higher realms. They share a sympathetic link.
Okay.
Then you have to apply these corresponding things opportunely. That means at a specific moment in time that reflects harmony, like to the harmony which did infuse the virtue into that thing in the first place.
So you're aligning both the material you use and the timing of your action with the specific celestial source of the power you're trying to attract, like tuning into a specific frequency.
Exactly like tuning in. He uses several analogies to explain how this unlocking of virtue works. Like bruising mustard seed is what releases its sharpness, right?
Yeah.
Or applying heat is what makes invisible writing done with milk or onion juice suddenly appear. In the same way, the celestial harmony, when things are rightly exposed to it in a celestial season, supposedly discloses virtues lying in the water or whatever object, stirs them up, strengtheneth them, produceth that into act, which before was only in power.
So the potential is always there, but you need the right key, the right time and material to activate it. The idea being to, as he says, draw a singular gift from the sun through the beams thereof, or from Mars or Jupiter or whichever body.
Yes, and this whole process is facilitated by that specific hierarchy of correspondence he laid out. Stones and metals correspond to herbs, herbs correspond to animals, animals to the heavens to the intelligences, and the intelligences ultimately correspond back to God.
It's a continuous chain.
Right. And by working with the corresponding links at each level, you can supposedly track that influence down from above.
The source mentions the Egyptians calling nature a magicianess here. Why?
Yes, supposedly because of this inherent magical power within nature itself, this ability of attracting like by like and suitable things by suitable, what the Greeks called sympathies, or supahana.
Can you give some examples of these sympathies or correspondences operating at different levels?
Sure. At the basic elemental level, there's agreement. Earth agrees with cold water, water with moist air, air with fire, fire with heaven itself. At more abstract levels, he says, the soul is united to the body by the spirit, and understanding is united to the spirit by the soul. He even uses the example of how a properly prepared body of an infant attracts a spirit from the universe, which then obtains understanding from God. It's all seen as deeply interwoven through these lines of correspondence.
And he talks about this chain running from God all the way down to stones as the first image.
Yes, that's the downward path, showing how things correspond by derivation. Things on lower levels are derived from and are examples of things on higher levels. And there's also an upward path he mentions showing correspondence by progression or evolution. Plant life leads to animal sense, which leads to human understanding, which leads to angelic immortality, culminating in God's divinity.
Okay, so you need to understand these connections, this flow of influence. But how do you specifically find and identify the virtues within a particular thing? How does Agrippa suggest you figure out what a specific plant or stone actually does? Where does the power lie?
Chapters 19-20 get into this. He says you can find virtues in a few main ways. The most common way is by species.
By species?
Yeah. This means the virtue is inherent in the entire type or kind of thing. So boldness is just part of being a lion or a cock. Fear is inherent in the species of hare or lamb. Lust in the sparrow, sadness in the cat, and so on. He claims the vast majority of natural virtues follow this species.
So if you need a virtue like boldness, you look for things associated with naturally bold species, like a lion or a cock. Makes sense.
Exactly. But he's quick to point out that not all virtues work this way. Some are found individually.
Individually.
Meaning it's a special, unique gift or power inherent in one particular thing or person, not the whole species. Examples he gives include a man who just naturally hates cats, or someone who's immune to poison, or that girl who supposedly ate spiders without any harm, or boldness found in a specific harlot, or fear in a particular thief. These aren't species-wide traits.
Right.
He gives a very specific example. Using the bone of a man who had never suffered from a fever was believed to cure quartan fever. That's highly individual.
Okay, so some powers are universal within a type, others are more like individual quirks or unique properties.
Yes. Then he makes another distinction about where within a thing the virtue actually resides. Sometimes it's throughout the whole substance, meaning every single part of the thing possesses the virtue.
Like the Echinus fish stopping the ship.
That's a prime example. The whole fish has the power. Other examples are the civet cat making dogs silent just by the touch of his shadow, or the herb celandine being good for eyesight, the whole plant, presumably.
Or the virtue can be localized, residing only in certain parts.
Precisely, certain parts. And the eyes come up frequently here again. The eyes of a basilisk or a civet cat are claimed to kill or freeze things just with their sight.
Right.
He brings up that very strange claim about the eyes of certain wolves causing hoarseness in a man if the wolf sees the man first. He even quotes Virgil on this. The wolf on Morris first half cast his eye.
That's oddly specific.
Isn't it? He also references claims about women in places like Scythia, Illyria, and Triballia who supposedly could kill just with an angry look, and the Tachines of Rhodes who could corrupt things with their sight, which apparently got them drowned by Jupiter. Witches, he adds, are said to actively use the eyes of such animals in their practices.
Eyes seem to be a particularly potent focal point for virtue in this system, huh?
They really do. Other specific parts are listed too. Ants, for instance, supposedly fly away from a lapwing's heart, but they don't care about its head or foot or eyes. Lizard gall attracts weasels, but its tail or head doesn't. Goat gall attracts frogs, while goat liver is an enemy to butterflies and maggots.
Okay.
Dogs are said to shun someone carrying a dog's heart. Foxes supposedly avoid poultry that has eaten a fox's liver. He uses the analogy of our own body parts. Bones receive life, eyes, sight, ears, hearing, to illustrate how different members naturally have specific functions and, by extension, specific inherent virtues.
Makes sense as an analogy.
He also mentions that fascinating Hebrew belief in a tiny, indestructible bone in humans called the LUZ. It's supposedly the size of a pulse, can't be destroyed by corruption or even fire, and it's the seed from which our bodies will spring up again in the resurrection.
The LUZ bone. That's a very specific and interesting detail to include. Now, what about the state of the thing? Does it matter if it's alive or dead? Does that change the virtue?
Yes, Chapter 21 tackles this directly. He states clearly that some powerful properties only exist while the thing is actually alive.
Like the Echinus stopping ships or the basilisk killing with sight?
Exactly. Those powers are gone once the creature dies. Another example given is applying a live duck to someone's belly for colic. The duck supposedly absorbs the pain and then dies itself. Arcasis is mentioned as having used a warm, freshly removed animal heart for treating quartan fever.
And what about those claims about swallowing warm animal hearts for enhancing memory or foretelling the future?
Yes, swallowing the still warm heart of a lapwing, a swallow, a weasel, or a mole is said to aid remembering, understanding, and even foretelling future events. He provides a kind of general guideline here. Things taken from animals, whether there's stones found inside them, specific members, excrements, whatever, should ideally be taken while the animal is still alive if possible. And if you can, you should let the animal live afterwards.
So you take the part you need, but you try to leave the animal living. That seems slightly more ethical, I guess.
That seems to be the preference stated, where feasible. Examples given that specifically require a live animal include taking a frog's tongue for truth-telling spells, a wolf's tooth for toothache remedies, frog eyes for tertian ague or inducing wakefulness, the ray from a forkfish for ensuring easy travel, a serpent's eye for treating watering eyes, a mole's tooth for toothache, a weasel's tail to prevent dogs from barking at you, and a chameleon's tongue for success in trials or to aid travel, though he adds a caution that bringing a chameleon tongue inside the house is dangerous.
Wow, a very specific list of live harvested components. What properties are claimed to remain after the animal or thing is dead?
Things where the idea of the matter is less swallowed up, as he puts it, retain their virtue even after death. This seems to mean things where the essential nature or form is particularly strong.
Examples.
Eagle feathers destroying the feathers of other birds they touch, a lion's skin destroying other animal skins, a civet cat's skin destroying a panther's skin, and a wolf's skin apparently corroding a lamb's skin it comes into contact with.
These sound like sympathies and antipathies again, but persisting after death. And some of these effects can manifest even without direct physical contact.
Yes, some are claimed to work purely through this sympathetic or antipathetic resonance at a distance. A drum made of wolfskin, for instance, supposedly silences a drum made of lambskin just by being in the same vicinity. That's the claim. A drum made from the skin of a racha fish drives away creeping things just by its sound. And wolf gut strings used on a harp purportedly will refuse to harmonize properly with sheep gut strings on the same instrument. These are powerful examples of these innate sympathies and antipathies operating beyond just direct physical touch.
It's almost like these objects retain a kind of energetic imprint of their living nature that continues to interact with the world around them. Okay, so we have the universe structure, the elements, the different kinds of virtues, especially those weird occult ones, and methods for locating them within things, considering whether they're alive or dead. Knowing which virtue comes from which celestial body is also absolutely vital in Agrippa's system, right?
Yes, absolutely. And Chapter 23 touches on this, admitting that figuring out these specific stellar correspondences is difficult. It's known primarily, he says, by imitation of their rays or motion or figure, or by matching colors, odors, and the effects of things to the known qualities of the stars and planets.
He gives a really lengthy list of solary things as a prime example, things believed to be under the sun's specific power and influence.
Yes, this list is a great illustration of the principle of correspondence in action, showing how it plays out across different categories of nature. So for the sun, it's associated with the brightest element, which is lucid flame.
Okay.
In the body, it corresponds to the pure blood and the spirit of life vital fluids. And in tastes, it's linked to things that are quick, sharp, but mixed with sweetness.
And of course, the most obvious solary thing, gold.
Gold, yes. Seen as solary because of its enduring splendor, its color, and also its attributed cordial quality. It was believed to directly receive virtue from the sun, making it strengthening to the heart.
The list of solary stones in the source is quite long and detailed. What kind of properties generally make a stone solary in this view?
Often, it's a visual resemblance to the sun or its rays or its effects, or perhaps attributed properties related to vitality, light, dispelling darkness, or offering protection. For example, he lists the Aetite stone, which has golden sparklings inside and was used against falling sickness and poisons.
Right.
The Eye of the Sunstone, which has a figure like an eye with a ray coming from the middle, supposedly comforts the brain and strengthens sight. The carbuncle, famous for shining by night, was used against airy or vaporous poisons. The chrysolite, a light green stone with a golden star appearance when held to the sun, was said to comfort breathing, help asthmatics, and interestingly, if bound with hair from an ass's mane onto the left arm, it drives away idle imaginations, melancholy fears, and foolishness.
Wow, that's a very specific application. The iris stone sounds beautiful too, the one that makes a rainbow reflection.
Yes, Described as being like crystal but with 6 corners, it reflects a rainbow when held partly in sunlight and partly in shadow. The heliotropion, which we know as heliotrope or bloodstone, green with red specks, is considered particularly solary. It's said to make a man constant, renowned, famous, and grant long life.
And it has that really strange claim about turning sunbeams to blood color.
That's the claim from the source, yes.
Huh.
When the stone is joined with the juice of the herb of the same name, heliotrope herb, in water, it supposedly turns the sunbeams shining through the water into a blood-red color, as if the sun were eclipsed. It's also said, with the herb's help, to dim or dazzle human sight.
That detail is incredible, linking a specific stone and a specific plant together to affect even the appearance of the sun itself. That's powerful correspondence.
It is. Other solary stones listed include the hyacinth, used against poisons and pestilential vapors, said to make the carrier safe and acceptable, bring riches and wit, strengthen the heart, and cheer the mind if held in the mouth. The pyrophilus, a red stone that supposedly turns from a heart shape into stone when put in fire, wondrous against poison, makes the carrier renowned and dreadful to enemies. And then there's the mysterious Pantora, also called Pantherus, Pantocris, or Evanthum. Apollonius supposedly found it. It's claimed to draw other stones to it, like a lodestone draws iron. It's powerful against all poisons, is spotted like a panther, contains all colors. Quite a stone.
Sounds like a legendary artifact almost.
It does. Other golden or lucid stones like topazius, chrysopassus, rubine, pelagius, a type of ruby, and oripigmentum, orpiment, are also considered solary.
Okay. So stones linked to the sun by color, light, effects related to vitality, visibility, or protection from darkness and poison. What about plants and trees that are considered solary?
Well, the obvious ones are plants that physically follow the sun's movement, like the marigold that turns its face toward the sun all day, or the lote tree, which supposedly folds and unfolds its leaves with the rising and setting of the sun. The shape of the lote tree's fruit and leaves are also considered solary. Other plants listed as solary include peony, celandine, balm, ginger, gentian, dittany, and vervain, which he notes has claimed uses in prophesying, expiations, and driving away evil spirits.
And trees that were traditionally consecrated to sun deities are included too?
Yes, absolutely. Those consecrated to Phoebus Apollo, like the bay tree, laurel, cedar, palm tree, ash, ivy, and the vine. These are often attributed properties like repelling poisons and lightnings and being able to endure winter extremes, reflecting the sun's power.
Okay.
Other aromatic solary items include mint, mastic, zedawari, saffron, balsam, amber, musk, yellow honey, lignum aloes, aloes wood, cloves, cinnamon, calamus aromaticus, pepper, frankincense, sweet marjoram, and libanotus, which Orpheus apparently called the sweet perfume of the sun.
That's a very fragrant list. And moving up the chain, what types of animals are considered solary?
Generally, animals that are seen as magnanimous, courageous, ambitious, dominant, or renowned for strength and victory. The lion is the prime example, the king of beasts.
Makes sense.
Also included are the crocodile, the spotted wolf, the ram, the boar, and the bull, which he notes the Egyptians dedicated to the sun in various forms, like Veritas, Apis, and Pathis. The wolf was also consecrated to Apollo and Latona, Apollo's mother.
Okay.
The baboon gets a specific mention as solary, along with that truly bizarre claim that it barks exactly 12 times a day, once every hour, and urinates 12 times an hour precisely at the equinoxes. This detail was supposedly known and engraved on fountains by the Egyptians.
That baboon detail is just so specific and weirdly mathematical. Fascinating. What about birds under the sun?
Birds that are unique or associated with strength, height, light, or royalty are solary. The phoenix, being one of a kind, is a key example. The eagle is called the queen of birds, said to overcome all others in life and death. It's seen as an emblem of spirit and light, flies the highest, has the most acute sight, and is supposedly not excluded from the secrets of Jupiter. It portends advancement and victory, specifically victory by blood, as it is said to drink only blood, not water. The vulture and the swan are also listed as solary. Birds that sing at sunrise, like the cock and the crow, are naturally solary. The hawk is also reckoned solary by porphyry, being another emblem of spirit and light.
Are there any other animal characteristics that link them to the sun, like behaviors or appearances?
Yes, things that resemble the sun's effects, like worms that shine at night or the beetle that emerges from cow dung linking to rebirth renewal, perhaps like the sun. Also, animals whose eyes are claimed to change with the sun's course throughout the day.
And fish. Any fish under the sun.
A few are mentioned. The sea calf, which supposedly resists lightning, certain shellfish, and the pulmo fish, which are said to shine by night. The stellafish, starfish, associated with parching heat like the sun, strombi fish, which are said to follow their king, and margari, oysters, which also supposedly have a king among them and are noted to dry into a golden stone.
Oysters have a king. Okay. The source does briefly mention other planets too, like dogs being under Mercury and the moon.
Yes, it acknowledges that every planet has its corresponding things across all levels of nature. The solary list is just a detailed example of the principle.
So the basic idea is to look for things in nature that, through their appearance, their behavior, their attributed properties, seem to somehow resonate with the known qualities of a particular star or planet. And the source also mentions specific seals and characters that stars produce, like actual marks.
Yes, chapter 33 describes this concept. Agrippa claims that the stars, through their rays and their specific harmonious disposition at certain times, actually produce specific seals and characters within inferior things on stones, in plants, on animal parts or members.
So these aren't just random patterns.
No, according to him, these characters are not random at all. They supposedly signify the star or the specific celestial harmony that was present when the thing received its particular virtue. And crucially, these characters are said to contain that star's peculiar virtue.
So the physical mark itself is like a stamp or a container of the celestial power.
Exactly. It's said to both signify and hold the specific virtue. Ancient wise men, he claims, knew these characters and wrote them down.
Yeah.
He even makes a really remarkable claim that human hands are considered a completest image of the whole universe, containing the characters of all the stars.
Whoa.
And that chiromancers, palm readers, supposedly understood these characters in the hands. He cites Julian calling these characters in the hands sacred and divine letters, literally showing the life writ in their hands.
Wow, linking palmistry directly to cosmic influence and divine script written onto us. That adds a whole other layer to this idea of correspondence, doesn't it? Okay. So, understanding these correspondences and these seals or characters is how you identify things that have specific powers. Now, how does one actively apply this knowledge? This gets us right into the practical side of natural magic.
Right, tapping into the power. Chapter 34 comes back to the method for actively drawing down celestial influence. You use things belonging to a star, things that correspond, and you use them at an opportune celestial time when that star's influence is strong or well aspected.
Okay.
He also notes that using things higher up in that star's chain of correspondence, like an animal part over a plant or a plant over a mineral maybe, is often more readily available or potent. And remember, the spirit of the world, that quintessence, is the essential medium for this transmission of power.
He also mentions using artificial mixtures, not just finding things in nature.
Yes, virtues aren't just found ready-made. They can apparently be created or significantly amplified by artificially mixing different things together according to certain proportions. And crucially, doing this mixing under favorable heavenly constellations. That's from chapter 34.
Okay.
The analogy he uses is bees making honey. They gather nectar from innumerable different flowers, but they combine it all into one substance, honey, which then contains the virtues of all those flowers. He even mentions someone named Eudoxus Gutius, claiming that Libyan giants used to make an artificial honey from flowers that was almost as good as the bees.
Interesting. Is there a key to making a really effective mixture?
He emphasizes a perfect mixture. This is where the components are so firmly compacted and integrated that they truly become one substance, losing their individual identities and qualities.
Examples.
Naturally formed conglomerate stones, or trees successfully grafted together becoming a single organism, oysters incorporating stones into their shells, animals that seem to turn to stone, or even things like ebony, which seems like both wood and stone. Applying these kinds of perfectly blended mixtures under the right celestial influence, combining diverse celestial and natural powers, is said to cause wonders through things like ointments, eye salves, calories, and especially fumes or suffumigations. He cites ancient authors like Hyramus, Archita, Democritus, and Hermes Alcarat as masters of these arts.
And the source makes some truly extraordinary claims about using this process to actually procure life or instill more noble forms into matter. That sounds pretty radical.
Chapter 36 really delves into this, and yes, it is radical. The claim is that by mixing and preparing matter in the right way during fit seasons, meaning under the right celestial influences, that matter becomes prone and apt to receive and powerful to act. A perfect mixture of qualities supposedly breaks down the former contrarieties within the matter, making it ready and receptive to receive a more noble form.
And then what happens?
Heaven, or the cosmos, then supposedly bestows life, a sensible soul, and various celestial influences and wonderful gifts according to the capacity of that newly generated life or soul.
So the right preparation and timing can literally cause matter to spontaneously gain life or upgrade to a higher form of being.
And that is precisely the claim being made. Celestial virtue is seen as being kind of asleep or latent until it finds a living body to inhabit, and once it's in a living body, it doth always burn, it's always active. This concept leads directly into his discussion of monstrous generations.
Monstrous generations.
Yeah, things generated seemingly spontaneously or unusually, which Agrippa attributes to texts like Nemeth's book or the laws of Pluto, because they aren't produced by the normal, everyday course of nature.
Like those examples of worms appearing from dead gnats, or bees generating from the carcass of a dead calf or ox.
Exactly. Or scorpions supposedly generating from bruised garden basil leaves, or snakes from mistress woman's hair buried under dung, or even pernicious worms generating from horsetail hair left in water. These are all presented as examples of matter, prepared or situated in specific ways, becoming receptive and then receiving unexpected life or form from the universe.
Okay.
He even mentions an alleged art or technique to generate a form resembling a man from a hen's egg, calling the result the true mandrake. And Agrippa makes the very bold personal claim here to have actually seen this and to know how to make it himself.
A manufactured mandrake from an egg. That's quite a statement to just drop into a philosophical work like this.
It really is. But the underlying principle he keeps emphasizing is that a congruity of natural things is sufficient for the receiving of influence from celestial. If you prepare matter perfectly, make it pure and receptive, it becomes ideally fit to receive influence because of its binding and continuity to the soul of the world. He goes so far as to state it's actually impossible for suitably prepared matter not to receive life or a more noble form according to its preparation and the prevailing celestial influences at that moment.
So the right combination of preparation and timing is claimed to essentially compel the universe, the celestial powers, to bestow a specific form or gift onto that prepared matter. It's almost like forcing nature's hand.
That seems to be the implication. Chapter 37 summarizes this whole idea by stating that through these natural or artificial preparations, one can receive celestial gifts. The inferior answers the superior, reaching ultimately to the supreme source. This sequence, this interaction between levels through correspondence and preparation, is the fundamental basis of magic and occult philosophy for Agrippa. He says, every day some natural thing is drawn by art and some divine thing is drawn by nature. This is the core mechanism of sympathy and practical application.
Okay. What about drawing out these virtues invisibly without needing direct physical contact or complex mixing? Are there methods for that?
Yes, Chapter 39 covers what he calls occult attraction methods. Virtues, especially the celestial ones, are said to be drawn forth invisibly, occultly, primarily through the rays of the stars themselves, but also via specific fumes, lights, sounds, and using natural things that are agreeable to celestial influences.
How do these invisible methods work? Why do fumes or sounds attract celestial power?
He claims these methods work because they possess a kind of reason, sense, and harmony, and incorporeal and divine measures and orders. They operate on a subtle, harmonious level that resonates with the celestial influences, going beyond just crude corporeal or elemental qualities.
So these aren't just physical actions. They're designed to resonate on a kind of vibrational, harmonious level with the powers being sought.
That's the core idea. He gives specific examples. Holding the stone reportedly found in a civet cat's eye under your tongue, or using the selenite, moonstone, is said to induce divination or prophesy. The Anchitas stone supposedly helps call forth images of the gods, while the Sinaiticus stone is claimed to keep the ghosts of the dead nearby, perhaps for necromantic purposes. Certain herbs, like Aglaophotis, also called marmorites, and Riangelita, are also said to be used by magicians for similar effects, or for prophesying when consumed.
The source also mentions herbs that can raise the dead. That's a pretty significant claim showing up again here.
Yes, Xanthus and Juba are cited, claiming that an herb called Balas revived a young dragon, and that a man in Arabia was restored to life by some herb. Agrippa himself expresses some doubt whether this is truly possible for humans according to natural law, but he asserts it's certain and manifest for other animals.
Like those examples of flies being revived in warm ashes, or bees apparently coming back to life in catnip juice.
Exactly. Or eels regenerating in mud mixed with vinegar and vulture blood, or pieces of the Achanis fish reforming themselves in the sea, or the famous story of the pelican restoring its young with its own blood. These are all presented as natural examples of restoration or apparent revival that lends some kind of credence, within his framework at least, to the possibility of such powers existing, even if raising humans seems more dubious.
Okay. So moving from identifying and attracting powers to some really specific and sometimes controversial applications, the source then delves into something called bindings. What are those?
Yes, chapter 4 introduces bindings and calls the concept a thing of great wonderment. This refers to the power to constrain, restrain, compel, or influence things and people through various magical or natural means, basically tying something up, either literally or metaphysically.
What kind of things could supposedly be bound in this way? The list sounded incredibly broad.
It is extraordinarily broad. It covers almost every aspect of life and the natural world. The list includes binding men, making them fall in love or hate or become sick or healthy, binding thieves, presumably stopping them from stealing or escaping, binding merchants, preventing them from buying or selling successfully, binding whole armies, stopping their advance, binding ships, keeping them stuck in harbor, binding mills, preventing the wheel from turning, binding cisterns or fountains, stopping water flow, binding the ground itself, preventing building or making it barren, binding fire, stopping it from burning, binding lightnings and tempests, preventing them from causing harm, binding dogs, stopping their barking, and even binding birds and wild beasts, preventing them from flying or running away.
Wow.
The source acknowledges these claims are scarce credible, but insists they are often known by experience.
It's basically a claim of having control over almost anything in the physical or social world through these methods. How are these bindings supposedly achieved? What are the techniques?
Through a huge array of methods, really. The source gives a long list: sorceries, cauleries, medicated eye salves, unguents, ointments, love potions, physically binding or hanging things up, using specially prepared rings, charms, employing strong imaginations and passions. We talked about that power earlier. Using images or effigies, characters or seals, enchantments, imprecations, curses, specific lights or sounds, numbers, words, names, invocations to spirits or deities, sacrifices, swearing oaths, conjuring, consecrations of objects, devotions, and various kinds of observations and superstitions. It's a real mix of ritual action, specially prepared objects, and leveraging mental or emotional states.
The source provides some pretty vivid examples of sorcery that fall under this heading of bindings. That account from Apelius about Pamphila, the sorceress, is particularly detailed and, frankly, quite gruesome.
It is. That's in chapter 40. Pamphila is trying to magically procure the love of a young man, but her servant mistakenly brings her goat hairs instead of the young man's hair.
Oops.
Big oops.
Yeah.
But Pamphila, undeterred, performs her rites anyway. She does it on a tiled roof, open to the night sky and the celestial aspects. She uses spices, iron plates inscribed with strange words, pieces taken from ship sterns, and, yes, gruesomely, members of buried carcasses.
Like actual body parts from corpses.
Yes, the text specifically lists noses, fingers, and nails taken from hanged men, blood collected from murdered men, and even mangled skulls. She uses enchanted entrails in the ritual and sprinkles various liquids around, including fountain water, cow milk, and mountain honey or mead. The ritual involves tying the wrong hairs, remember, to knots, and burning them with strong-smelling odors.
Oh, okay. Then what happens?
The text then claims, invoking an irresistible power of magic and blind force of the gods, that the bodies corresponding to the goat hairs that are smoking suddenly assume a human spirit. They can feel, hear, walk, and they come skipping and leaping with joy and love towards the source of the smell, mistakenly drawn to the sorceress by the power of the ritual and the compelling scent. It's a failed love spell, but it still demonstrates the power, albeit misdirected.
That's a very literal and, disturbing depiction of how a love spell is thought to work, even when it goes wrong. What about that story from Augustine about women turning men into cattle with cheese?
Right. Augustine is reported as having heard accounts of sorceress women in Italy who allegedly possessed the power to turn men into working cattle, basically, beasts of burden like oxen or asses, just by feeding them some kind of enchanted cheese. And then they could apparently restore them to human form after the men had done whatever work the women needed them for.
Turning men into cows with cheese. I mean, these examples are really pushing the boundaries of what Agrippa presents elsewhere as natural magic, aren't they? This sounds more overtly supernatural. The source also dedicates a pretty substantial section specifically to the claimed power of menstruous blood in these kinds of practices.
Yes, chapter 42 focuses heavily on this, describing it as having great power in sorcery and being considered quite starkly a greater poison than almost any other substance. A very long list of specific, often contradictory and extreme effects are attributed to it.
Okay, what are some of these effects claimed in the source? It sounded like a real mix.
It is. On the destructive side, it's claimed to spoil new wine just by proximity, make it sour, and even ruin grapevines forever just by touch. It supposedly makes plants and trees barren, kills newly set seedlings instantly, burns garden herbs, and makes fruit fall off trees prematurely. It's said to darken mirrors just by being looked into by a menstruating woman, dull the edges of knives and razors, dim the brightness of ivory, and cause iron and brass to rust incredibly quickly, with the source noting the smell is very strong.
Okay, those are pretty severe destructive effects on plant life and inanimate objects. What about animals and people?
It's claimed to make dogs go mad if they taste it, rendering their subsequent bites incurable. It supposedly kills whole hives of bees or drives them away from any hive that's been touched. It makes linen turn black when boiled. For animals, it's said to make mares cast their foals if they simply touch it. And for women, it supposedly causes miscarriages if smeared on them. Asses are claimed to become permanently barren if they eat corn that has been touched by it. Even the ashes from burnt menstruous clothes are said to have power, changing the color of purple garments or taking the colors out of flowers.
Wow. Are there any positive or curative uses listed at all, despite it being called this greater poison? It seems purely destructive based on that list.
Surprisingly, yes, there are some quite remarkable beneficial claims mixed in. It's said to cure tertian and quartan agues, types of recurring fevers, especially if a drop is placed in black ram's wool, tied up in a silver bracelet, or secretly used by the woman herself to anoint the soles of the patient's feet.
Secretly anointing feet.
It's also claimed to cure fits of falling sickness, epilepsy, and to cure hydrophobia after a mad dog bite. You just have to put a menstruous cloth under the cup the person drinks from.
Under the cup, all right.
Naked menstruous women walking through cornfields before sunrise are said to drive away pests like cankers, worms, beetles, and flies, though paradoxically, if they do it after sunrise, the corn itself will wither.
Oh.
Pliny is cited for its claimed ability to expel hail, tempests, and lightnings if exposed to the sky.
So it's presented as possessing both incredibly harmful and paradoxically protective or curative powers, depending entirely on how and when it's used. Does its power vary based on timing, like the menstrual cycle or the moon?
Yes. The source claims its power as a poison is greater during the waning phase of the moon, even greater still between the waning and the new moon, and any negative effects caused during a lunar or solar eclipse are considered incurable. Its greatest force overall is claimed during the first years of menstruation, even in the years of virginity. Touching the posts of a house with it is said to prevent mischief from entering. Threads taken from a garment touched by it supposedly cannot be burned. And if the whole cloth is cast into a fire, the fire won't spread.
That's an incredibly specific and complex and frankly disturbing set of beliefs surrounding this natural substance.
One final paradoxical claim highlights this. Putting a menstruous woman's hair under dung is said to breed serpents, but burning that same hair supposedly drives serpents away by its smell. The conclusion drawn in the source is that its poisonous force is so great, menstruous substances are even poison to poisonous creatures.
A poison so strong it can act as an antidote to other poisons, or even to itself, depending on how it's prepared. It's a deeply unsettling set of beliefs. What about hippomanes? That sounds less familiar.
Hippomanies is another item discussed in Chapter 42 with potent sorcery applications, specifically for love magic. It's described as a little venomous piece of flesh about the size of a fig and black in color that is supposedly found on the forehead of the newborn colt right after birth.
On a foal's forehead.
Yes, and the source claims the mare will not love her foal or allow it to suckle unless she eats this piece immediately.
Okay, weird. And its use in sorcery.
It's said to have a most wonderful power to procure love. If you take this hippomanes, powder it, and give it to someone to drink in a cup mixed with a drop of blood from the person who is in love with them, it is claimed to compel the drinker to return that love intensely.
So, using a specific part of a newborn horse linked to maternal bonding to induce romantic love, that's potent symbolism. Any other really striking sorcery examples mentioned in this section? There seem to be quite a few.
Yes, the source brings up the story from Apollonius's Argonautics about Prometheus's herb. This herb supposedly grew from the blood that dripped onto Mount Caucasus, where the vulture gnawed Prometheus's liver. If you smear your body with its blackish juice after performing devotions to the goddess Proserpina, Persephone, you are claimed to become invulnerable to both sword and fire.
Claims of magical invulnerability again, linked to mythology.
Exactly. Saxo Grammaticus is mentioned for describing Froten's garment, which supposedly could not be damaged by the point or edge of any weapon.
Okay.
The civet cat comes up again as being just full of sorceries, citing Pliny. Its blood smeared on doorposts is claimed to completely invalidate the arts of jugglers and sorcerers attempting to work nearby, and supposedly prevents gods or spirits from being successfully called or persuaded to talk in that place.
Wow, like an anti-magic ward.
Seems so.
Yeah.
Hashes of its left foot ankle bone, if decocted boiled down with weasel blood, are said to make someone hateful and odious to others. The decocted eye supposedly does the same thing. Carrying the straight gut of a civet cat is claimed to be effective against the injustice of princes, for success in petitions, and for ending lawsuits favorably. If bound to the left arm, it supposedly makes any woman the wearer looks at follow him, and wearing its forehead skin purportedly resists bewitchings.
The civet cat sounds like a whole portable magic shop in one animal, according to these claims.
Apparently so, yes. Basilisk blood gets another mention here, being called the blood of Saturn. It's attributed great force for getting success in petitions made to powerful men, for gaining answers to prayers from God, and for obtaining remedies or special privileges.
Okay. What about using animal parts for divination or creating omens within this sorcery context? Not just reading natural omens, but making things happen.
Yes, that also seems to fall into this category. Taking a black tick from a dog's left ear is claimed to be a prognostic of life or death. If the sick person answers, when the person holding the tick stands at their feet, there's hope. If they don't answer, they die. Putting a stone that has been bitten by a mad dog into someone's drink is said to cause discord and arguments.
Yikes.
Putting a dog's tongue in your shoe under the great toe, especially if combined with the herb hound stung, supposedly prevents any dogs from barking at you. The membrane from a dog's afterbirth, the second deems, is said to have the same effect, linking back to the idea that dogs shun someone carrying the dog's heart.
These rituals are incredibly specific, aren't they? And often involve quite unpleasant ingredients or actions tied to particular animal parts.
Very much so. The red toad found living in briars or brambles, citing Pliny again, is also described as being just full of sorceries. The bone taken from its left side is claimed to make cold water boil, restrain the rage of dogs, and procure love if put in a drink. But the bone from its right side supposedly makes hot water turn cold, and it cannot be reheated unless the bone is removed, cures quartans and other fevers, as bound up in snakeskin, and actually restrains love and lust. Its spleen and heart are noted as being remedies against the poison of the toad itself.
So completely opposing magical effects residing in the left versus the right bones of the same toad. That's incredibly specific duality.
It is. Even instruments used in acts of violence are said to gain power. A sword that has been used to kill a man is claimed to have wonderful power. Bridle snaffles or spurs made from the metal of such a sword can purportedly tame the wildest horse instantly. Horseshoes forged from it are said to make a horse incredibly swift and untiring, though this requires specific characters and names to be written on them. Dipping a sword that was used for a beheading into wine is claimed to cure quartan fever if drunk.
So objects become imbued with potent, transferable power through their association with significant, often violent acts.
Exactly. And one last really strange one. Drinking bear brains, specifically from the bear's own skull, is said to make the drinker fierce and raging like a bear. They supposedly believe they are changed into a bear, see visions of bears, and stay mad until the effects of the draft wear off, with no other physical illness perceived.
That sounds less like sorcery and more like a recipe for inducing temporary, terrifying madness.
It definitely blurs the lines. Now, moving on from these quite intense practices, Chapter 43 discusses perfumes and suffumigations, basically, incense and fumigation. These are described as having great force for the opportune receiving of celestial gifts under the rays of the stars. They are believed to work very strongly upon the air and consequently upon our breath.
How does that mechanism supposedly work? How does smoke attract gifts?
The source claims that our breath itself is changed by inhaling the vapors from the specific fume being burned. This altered breath then affects the air around us, and this affected air can quickly penetrate into our breast and vitals, supposedly reducing us to like qualities, making our internal state match the quality of the fume, or making us highly receptive to specific external influences like those from the stars.
So inhaling the right substances at the right time can actually change your internal state or make you more susceptible to external cosmic powers.
That's exactly the idea. And because of this, they are extensively used in divination. Specific fumes are used to affect the fancy, the imagination, preparing the mind for soothsaying or receiving divine inspiration. Different fumes can be appropriated to specific deities to aid communication or vision.
Examples.
Fumes made from linseed, fleabane seed, violet roots, and parsley roots are mentioned as ways to help foresee the future and induce prophesying.
Can these fumes affect the external world too, or call spirits?
Yes, absolutely. Porphyry is cited, stating that certain vapors from fumigations have the power to raise airy spirits and can even cause effects like thundering and lightnings.
Yeah.
Burning a chameleon's liver on the roof of a house is claimed to raise showers and lightnings. Burning its head and throat together with oak wood supposedly causes storms and lightnings.
So incense is a tool for weather control and spirit summoning.
And specifically to make spirit images appear visually. Certain fumes, when burned under the correct opportune celestial influences, are said to cause images or forms to actually appear in the air or elsewhere.
What kind of fumes do that?
A fume made from coriander, smallage, henbane, and hemlock, these are called the spirits herbs, is used to make spirits come together. A different mixture, using sagapin root, the juice of hemlock and henbane, Tapsis barbatus, mullein, red sanders, sandalwood, and black poppy, is said to cause spirits and strange shapes to appear visibly.
Okay.
Interestingly, adding smallage, celery, to a fume supposedly chases spirits away and destroys any visions they might have created. Fumes of calamint, peony, mints, and palma Christi, castor oil plant, are also listed as being effective for driving away evil spirits and banishing vain imaginations.
So you have specific recipes for summoning spirits and others for banishing them. It's quite systematic.
It is. And these fumes can also be used to gather or put animals to flight, according to Pliny. The fume of the Laparis stone is claimed to call out all beasts from hiding. Burning the throat bones of a hart supposedly gathers serpents, while burning the hart's horn chases them away. The fume of peacock feathers also chases serpents. Burning an ass's lungs puts poisonous creatures to flight. Burning horse or mule hoofs drives away mice. Specifically, the left mule hoof drives away flies.
Ancient pest control using magical fumes. What about creating illusions for people?
Yes, that's mentioned too. A confection made from cuttlefish gall, mixed with red storax, roses, and lignum aloes, when smoked with seawater or blood, is said to make a house appear to be full of water or blood to those inside. If the same mixture is smoked with plowed earth, it makes the earth seem to quake,
Causing specific sensory hallucinations via inhaled smoke. And the effects of these fumes can linger in a place.
Yes, the source explicitly states that these vapors can infect anybody and infuse a virtue which doth continue long, much like how the contagion of pestilence can remain active in a house or garment long after the initial exposure.
Are they also used to empower magical tools like rings or images?
Yes, so fumigations are used for consecrating images, rings, and even for guarding hidden treasures. Porphyry is cited, saying they are very effectually used for these purposes. Hermes is quoted with a specific example for magically hiding treasure. You can seal your gold or silver at the exact time of the conjunction of the moon and the sun, and then you fumigate the spot with a mixture of coriander, saffron, henbane, smallage, and black poppy, all in equal parts, mixed with hemlock juice.
And what's the effect?
The claim is that the hidden item will never be found or taken by anyone else. Spirits will guard it, and anyone who tries to take it will be hurt or fall into a frenzy.
So using fumes to create magical security systems for buried treasure, that's quite something.
Hermes is also quoted saying that the fume of spermaceti, whale ambergris, is nothing like for the raising of spirits. Specifically, airy spirits are said to be quickly gathered by a fume composed of spermaceti, lignum aloes, pepperwort, musk, saffron, and red storax mixed with lapwing blood. Using this particular fume at grave sites is said to gather the spirits and ghosts of the dead effectively.
Different fumes for different kinds of spirits or different goals then? It's very specialized.
There's a general rule given for planetary fumes. If you're directing your work towards the sun, you should use solary fumes. If towards the moon, use lunary fumes, and so on for each planet. Specific ingredients are listed as corresponding to each of the 7 classical planets.
Right, we saw some of those earlier. Odoriferous roots for Saturn, fruits like nutmegs and cloves for Jupiter, aromatic woods like sandalwood and aloes wood for Mars, gums like frankincense and musk and ambergris for the Sun, flowers like roses and violets for Venus, peels of wood or fruit like cinnamon and citrus peel for Mercury, and leaves like bay leaves for the Moon.
Exactly. And there's a general opinion cited from magicians. Good matters, like operations aimed at promoting love or goodwill, require good fume, meaning pleasant-smelling, odoriferous, often precious substances. Conversely, evil matters aimed at causing hatred, anger, or misery require a stinking fume made from materials of little worth or unpleasant nature.
Interesting distinction. Even the signs of the zodiac have their own proper fumes listed.
Yes, things like myrrh for Aries, pepperwort for Taurus, mastic for Gemini, camphor for Cancer, frankincense for Leo, sandalwood for Virgo, galbanum for Libra, opopanax for Scorpio, lignamallows for Sagittarius, benjamin for Capricorn, euphorbium for Aquarius, and red storax for Pisces. And Hermes' most powerful fume of all is supposedly compounded of the 7 aromatics, drawing on the powers of all 7 planets combined.
You mentioned earlier that suffumigations could cause mental effects, like making people act in their sleep. How does the source explain that phenomenon?
Chapter 43 revisits this, stating that certain suffumigations or even unctions, ointments applied to the body, can make men speak, walk, or perform actions in their sleep, sometimes doing things they are unable or unwilling to do while awake. They can also cause the perception of horrid or delectable sounds where none exist.
Oh.
Agrippa links this to the state of people suffering from mania or melancholy. He observes that they often seem to externalize what their own imagination is creating. Internally, they fear things that aren't there, have false suspicions, flee when no one pursues, argue with themselves. He claims that specific magic confections can induce these kinds of passions, apparitions, or images through the various methods listed. Not just fumes, but also collories, unguents, potions, poisons, specially prepared lamps or lights, mirrors, images, enchantments, charms, sounds, music, and complex rites, observations, ceremonies, religions, and superstitions.
So the fumes, or other methods, act as a kind of physical or sensory trigger that, combined with the right intention and ritual context, can manipulate perception and the mind itself by interacting with the air, our breath, and our internal imaginative faculty.
Yes, it's presented as a claim of directly influencing the physical body and the mental or spiritual state through these quite tangible means. The source even circles back to transformations here, citing examples apparently achieved through magic confections or specific rituals. Circe, changing Ulysses' men into pigs, men being turned into wolves after tasting sacrifices at the rites of Jupiter or Lycaeus, as mentioned by Pliny and Augustine, those women turning travelers into working cattle with cheese, Augustine again, and even Pharaoh's sorcerers turning rods into serpents and water into blood, citing the authority of Scripture for that last one.
Some of these examples, particularly the physical transformations into animals, seem to really stretch the definition of natural magic, don't they? They perhaps venture into something else entirely.
They do seem to. Agrippa himself sometimes categorizes these extreme effects, like monstrous generations or transformations, as happening not according to the laws of nature, as commonly understood. Yet he includes them within the realm of possibilities achievable through the principles he's outlining. Perhaps he saw them as the most radical outcomes possible when matter is perfectly prepared to receive unusual forms or exceptionally powerful celestial influences pushing beyond normal bounds.
All right, just 2 more key topics from the outline to cover. Rings and places. How do they fit into this whole system of natural magic? They seem a bit different from herbs or fumes.
Chapter 47 discusses rings. Rings were much esteemed of by the ancients, he says, and they are believed to impress their virtue upon us, meaning the wearer when they are opportunely made. The timing and method of creation are key.
What kind of virtue do they impress on the wearer? What do they do?
They are said to directly affect the wearer's spirit. They can induce states like gladness or sadness, make the wearer seem courteous or terrifying, bold or fearful, amiable or hateful. They can also supposedly fortify the wearer against sickness, poisons, enemies, or even evil spirits.
So a ring isn't just decoration. It's potentially a wearable tool for influencing your own emotions, personality, how others perceive you, and providing magical protection.
That's exactly the claim.
Yeah.
And the method for making them properly is described in quite some detail. First, you must choose a star that is ascending fortunately in the heavens, and it needs to have a fortunate aspect or conjunction with the moon at that specific time.
Okay, precise astrological timing.
Yes. Then you select a stone and an herb that are known to be under the power of that chosen star. You make the ring itself out of a metal that is suitable to that same star, like gold for the sun, silver for the moon, iron for bars, etc. Then you fasten the stone into the ring, making sure to place the corresponding herb or root underneath the stone, hidden within the setting. And crucially, the ring must be made with the appropriate images, names, and characters associated with that star engraved upon it. And the whole process needs to be accompanied by the proper suffumigations burning the correct incense while it's being crafted. He mentions Philostratus Jarcus, describing an Indian prince who bestowed 7 such rings upon someone, each one made this way, and linked to the power of one of the 7 planets.
That sounds like an incredibly complex and precise process combining specific astrological timing, carefully chosen corresponding materials, metal, stone, herb, symbolic engravings, and ritual fuming.
It's all about creating a perfect magical focal point, a microcosm, specifically designed to attract, hold, and continually transmit the influence of that particular star directly to the person wearing it. And then, related to this idea of localized power, there's the virtue of places, which is discussed in chapter 48.
Places themselves can hold virtues, not just objects found in them, but the location itself.
Yes, a specific place can acquire wonderful virtues. This can happen either because of specific things that were once located there or events that happened there, or from the influence of the stars that shine particularly strongly upon that location, or sometimes through other hidden occult means.
Examples.
He gives several, citing Pliny for some. Like if you mark the exact spot on the ground where you first hear a cuckoo call in the spring, then dig up the earth from that footstep and scatter it in your house, no fleas will breed there.
Okay.
Or, if you scatter dust taken from a snake's track among your beehives, it makes the bees return to their hives. Dust from a spot where a mule rolled its body on the ground can supposedly mitigate the heat of love or lust if applied somehow. Dust from where a hawk rolled, if bound up in red cloth, is claimed to cure quartan fever.
Dust from animal rolling spots having medicinal or behavioral effects. These are very specific claims tied to the ground itself.
Yes. A stone taken from a swallow's nest supposedly relieves falling sickness and preserves the wearer from harm, especially if the stone is first rolled in swallow blood and the bird's heart. A really strange one is the claim that if someone cuts a vein, presumably for bloodletting, and then walks over the exact place where someone else previously fell down during an epileptic fit, the person who cut the vein will fall into the same disease.
Wow, like contagious epilepsy transmitted through the ground.
That's the implication. Conversely, nailing a piece of iron into the spot where an epileptic person hit their head during a fall is claimed to cure the disease. That's another from Pliny.
So places seem to retain and potentially transmit energy or influence from significant events, illnesses, or even just the presence of certain creatures or objects associated with them.
Exactly. And even specific herbs can acquire special virtues based on where or how they are gathered. An herb gathered from the head of an idol or statue, if bound with red thread, is said to allay headache. An herb gathered from brooks or rivers before sunrise, without being seen by anyone else, and then secretly bound to the left arm of a sick person who doesn't know it's there, is claimed to cure tertian fever.
The location and the secrecy of the gathering are key there. And just like elements or animals, certain types of places are believed to be specifically appropriated to certain stars. They have planetary correspondences too.
Yes, definitely. Saturn, for example, is associated with places that are stinking, dark, underground, religious, or mournful. Think churchyards, tombs, uninhabited or old, tottering houses, obscure or dreadful places, solitary dens, caves, pits, but also fish ponds, standing pools, and fens, marshes.
Okay, desolate or stagnant places.
Jupiter, on the other hand, is linked to privileged places, consistories of noble men, tribunals, high chairs or seats of authority, places of exercise, schools, and generally beautiful, clean places, especially those scattered or sprinkled with pleasant odors.
Places of power, learning, and beauty.
Mars, predictably, is associated with fiery and bloody places. Furnaces, bakehouses, shambles, butcher shops, execution grounds, fields of battle, and anywhere slaughter has occurred.
So the inherent energy or quality of a location is tied to its primary planetary correspondence, making it inherently suitable or unsuitable for certain types of magical operations or likely to attract certain kinds of influences or events.
Precisely. Which leads us naturally into the topic of divination and omens, particularly discussed in chapters 57-50c. How do you read these signs?
How does divination fit into this overall framework of natural magic? It seems a bit different from manipulating substances.
Agrippa sees it as another crucial way of reading and understanding the hidden connections and influences constantly operating within nature. Some forms of divination are quite straightforward, based on natural causes that are understood through long experience in different arts or professions. Like physicians predicting the course of an illness, husbandmen predicting weather, shepherds predicting dangers to the flock, or mariners prognosticating storms from observing natural signs. He mentions Aristotle wrote a whole book about these kinds of practical, time-based predictions.
But he highlights auguria and auspicia as the chief forms, the ones based on observing signs.
Yes, these were highly esteemed, especially by the Romans. He cites Cicero noting that the people of Tatia, Etruria, undertook absolutely no public or private business without first consulting these arts. There were different specialized types: Auspicia from observing four-footed beasts, Pedestria; Auguria proper from observing birds; celestial auspices from thunder and lightning; Caduca from observing falling objects, like things dropped accidentally; and sacred auspices taken during sacrifices. There were also specific bad omens, Piacula, like if the sacrificial animal escaped the altar or bellowed loudly when struck or fell in an improper way; and the exauguration, like if the augur's special rod, the lichos, happened to fall from his hand during a ritual.
Michael Scotus is mentioned for having 12 specific kinds of auguria based on bird sightings. That sounds very systematic.
Yes, apparently Scotus categorized 12 main types, 6 considered generally good if the sign appeared on the observer's right, and 6 corresponding ones if seen on the left. They had specific Latin-sounding names like Fernova, Fervatus, Confort, etc., and their meaning depended on the bird's action: flying forward, resting, coming towards you, flying away, and its position relative to the observer. For example, seeing a man or bird appear before you on your left, but moving forward, was a good sign for business, Fernova. But if it was resting on your left, that was an ill sign,
Vervatus. It's incredibly detailed. Even sneezing is considered a form of prognostication.
Yes. Sneezing was thought significant because it proceeds from the head, which was considered a sacred place, the seat of the intellect, where divine sparks might manifest. Homer is mentioned in this context. Similarly, any random speech or thought that comes spontaneously into your mind unawares right upon waking up in the morning is considered a potent presage or augurium for the day ahead.
What about specific animals that are considered naturally prophetic, not just birds?
Chapter 50 states explicitly that many animals are, quote, by a natural power inbred in them, prophetical. They possess a natural instinct for presaging future events. The cock, for instance, not only tells the hours of the night and morning, but is even claimed to be able to chase away a lion just by spreading its wings.
Really?
That's the claim. Singing or chattering birds, and even flies pricking more insistently than usual, are said to foretell rain. Dolphins leaping playfully out of the water are believed to forewarn of approaching tempests.
And auguries specifically from birds are considered particularly significant, right?
Extremely significant. He notes that various ancient cultures, like the Phrygians, Cilicians, Arabians, Umbrians, and especially the Tuscans, Etruscans, relied heavily on bird augury, and that countless experiments and examples prove its validity within his framework. The source states that in all things the oracles of things to come are hid, but that auminal birds are the chief carriers of these messages. He even mentions the poetic idea that these special birds were originally humans who were transformed into birds.
When observing birds for omens, what specifically do you need to pay attention to?
Pretty much everything about them: where they land or sit, their setting, their flying path to your right or left, their speed, fast or slow, how many there are together, whether they are making noise or silent, whether they appear before you or after you've passed, whether they wait around or fly away quickly, and the specific direction they fly towards or come from. Every detail is potentially meaningful.
He gives a lot of specific bird omens, too.
Yes. Daws, jackdaws, seen in pairs signify marriage, especially if they bring forth both male and female young. A single daw is an omen of remaining single. A black hen pigeon similarly indicates a single life after a mate's death. Crows are considered just as significant as daws, but perhaps pertaining to greater matters.
Okay.
Epictetus, the philosopher, apparently believed that a crow croaking against someone in their direction foretold evil specifically related to their body, fortune, honor, wife, or children. Swans are said to foreknow secrets related to water, and seeing them acting cheerful presages happy events, especially for mariners and travelers. However, their predictions can be nullified if a stronger bird, particularly the eagle, gives a contrary omen.
The eagle seems to hold a really special place as the king of omen birds.
Yes, it's seen as the most powerful. Its omens override those of other birds if they conflict because it flies the highest, has the most acute sight, and is supposedly not excluded from the secrets of Jupiter himself. It portends advancement, honor, and victory, but specifically victory achieved by blood, because eagles are said to drink only blood, not water. Examples given include eagles giving victory to the Lucretians against Crotona, predicting kingship for hero of Syracuse by landing on his shield, target, predicting Alexander the Great would rule 2 kingdoms, Asia and Europe, because 2 eagles sat on his house at his birth, and predicting the future Roman kingdom for Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, when an eagle swooped down, took his hat, flew high, and then returned it to his head.
Those are some pretty dramatic historical omens attributed to eagles. Vultures are associated more with difficulty and slaughter.
Yes, they signify difficulty, hardness, ravenousness, and death. This was supposedly verified in the difficult beginnings of city-building projects. They are claimed to foretell the exact locations of future slaughters by arriving 7 days beforehand and specifically hovering over or respecting the place where the greatest killing will occur. Kings supposedly even send spies to watch vulture movements for military intelligence.
That's incredible if true. And the phoenix, predictably, is a sign of great good fortune.
Yes, seeing a phoenix promises singular good success. The fact that one was supposedly seen anew around the time Rome was founded was taken as a sign that the city was built auspiciously. The pelican restoring its young with its own blood gets mentioned again here, likely as a symbol of sacrifice and renewal.
What about smaller, more common birds? Do they give omens too?
Yes, the magpie, is talkative and therefore foretells the arrival of guests. The albanellus, perhaps a type of harrier or hawk, flying from left to right signifies cheerful entertainment is coming. Flying the opposite way means the contrary. Screech owls and horn owls are almost always considered unlucky, foretelling death, perhaps because they come silently and unawares, like death itself. However, the horn owl can sometimes signify diligence or watchfulness because it's not blind in the dark. This was the interpretation when one landed on Hiero's spear, making it a good omen in that context. Swallows are noted for dying to provide for their young, so seeing them might portend receiving a great patrimony or legacy after a friend's death.
It's like a whole complex language of bird behavior and its attributed meanings. What about auguries from beasts? Are they as detailed?
They are discussed, but generally in less detail than the birds. Meeting a weasel on your path is considered ominous. Seeing a hare is an ill omen for a traveler, unless they manage to catch it. A mule is generally a bad sign, signifying barrenness or lack of profit. A hog is pernicious, signifying you might encounter pernicious or harmful men. A horse betokens quarrelings and fightings, he quotes Virgil again. With war are horses armed, yea, threaten war. However, seeing horses yoked together equally in a chariot signifies peace.
An ass is generally unprofitable, but it provided a good omen for Marius.
Yes. The story goes that Marius was fleeing his enemy Sulla and saw an ass ignore its food and run directly towards nearby water. This showed Marius a path to safety leading to the sea, allowing him to escape. So, while generally unprofitable, an ass can sometimes be a good sign. Meeting an ass foal specifically signifies future labor, patience, and encountering hindrances. The wolf is generally a good sign if you meet one unexpectedly. Hero Cecilia had his future kingdom confirmed when a wolf snatched a book from him. But very specifically, a wolf makes him speechless whom he sees first.
That's the folk belief, right? If the wolf sees you before you see it, you lose your voice.
Exactly. A wolf tearing apart a watchman was taken as a bad omen for the Roman army before a defeat. Wolves also signify perfidious or untrustworthy men, with a link possibly made to the Romans' own origin story of being nursed by a she-wolf, passing that nature down.
Interesting twist. A lion is good, but a lioness is bad, specifically for women.
Yes, meeting a lion is a good sign as the strongest animal, strikes terror, signifies power. But meeting a lioness is considered bad specifically for a woman because she hinders conception and brings forth cubs only once in her life, apparently. Meeting sheep and goats is generally good. Oxen are good to meet if they are treading corn, and even better if they are plowing. They might hinder your immediate journey, but they recompense you with the favor of the auspice. A dog is considered fortunate to meet during a journey. Cyrus the Great was supposedly nourished by a dog as an infant and became king. Even the angel companion of Tobit in the Bible didn't scorn having a dog companion. The castor, beaver, biting off its own testicles when hunted, is taken as an ill omen, portending a man injuring himself through his own actions.
What about really small animals? Mice, insects?
Yes, they give omens too. Mice signify danger. They supposedly gnawed the gold shields in the Capitol before the consuls were intercepted by Hannibal. Locusts standing still in a place or burning up hinder your wishes and are an ill omen. Grasshoppers, conversely, promote your journey and foretell a good event. A spider weaving its line downwards signifies hope of receiving money. Pismires, ants, are diligent providers and build safe nests, so they portend security, accumulating riches, and sometimes a great army. Ants devouring Tiberius Caesar's pet dragon were interpreted as advising him to heed the tumult of the multitude, the common people.
Ants eating a dragon.
No way.
And snakes. They seem important.
Yes. Seeing a snake means you should take heed of an ill-tongued enemy, as the snake's power is seen as being in its mouth. A snake appearing in Tiberius's palace was taken as a sign of his impending fall. The famous story of the two snakes found in Sempronius Gracchus's bed is recounted. The soothsayer told him he must kill one, and if he killed the male, he would die. If the female, his wife would die. He killed the male, his wife lived, and he died soon after. A viper specifically signifies encountering lewd women or dealing with wicked children. An eel signifies meeting a man who is displeased with everybody and keeps apart, just as eels live apart from other fishes.
It's an incredibly exhaustive list, connecting virtually every common animal to some specific meaning or prediction based on its nature or behavior. But the source goes on to claim that the most effectual omen of all is actually man himself, more powerful than any bird or beast.
Yes, that's a key point. None more effectual and potent than man, none that doth signify the truth more clearly. When seeking omens, you must observe with great diligence the condition, age, profession, social station, gestures, movements, current activity, complexion, clothing, habit, name, words, and speech of the first person you happen to meet.
Why is a human encounter considered the clearest and most powerful omen?
Because, the source argues, the presages are more efficacious and clear, which are infused into man's soul. He cites Tully Cicero again, saying there's a certain auspicium naturally in men's souls of their eternity, an inherent capacity for the knowing of all the courses and causes of things. Man's soul, being higher in the chain of being, inherently holds a clear reflection of the cosmic order and future events.
Can you give some examples of these omens derived from encountering humans?
The classic example given is finding a man's head, still with its face intact, while digging the foundations of Rome. This was taken as a powerful omen of the future greatness of the empire, and the place was named the Capitol, from caput meaning head. On the negative side, when Brutian soldiers were about to fight Octavius and Antonius, they encountered an Ethiopian man coming out of the city gate, which they took as a bad presage and killed him. But they were defeated anyway. Meeting monks is commonly held to be an ill omen, especially first thing in the morning, because they are seen metaphorically as living by the sudden death of men, through prayers for the dying, funerals, inheritances, much like vultures live by following slaughters.
So human states, actions, appearances, even professions are seen as potentially powerful signs reflecting underlying realities or future events. And this whole complex system of augury, whether from birds, beasts, or humans, is ultimately rooted in what the source calls natural instinct.
Yes, chapter 50v explicitly grounds it in this light of natural instinct. Orpheus supposedly taught the arts of auspicia and auguria based on understanding this innate capacity. William of Paris is quoted describing this instinct as more sublime than all humane apprehension, and very near and most like to prophecy. It's a deep, inherent knowing.
Can you give some examples of this powerful natural instinct in action, beyond just presaging weather or battles, things that show deep awareness?
Sure. Dogs instinctively knowing and finding thieves even when hidden. Vultures foreseeing specific slaughter locations days in advance. Partridges somehow knowing their own true mother and leaving the foster mother who raised them. Humans perceiving harmful things or people by instinct, even if consciously ignorant, causing feelings of terror or horror, like sensing a hidden thief or feeling revulsion towards a secretly unchaste person,
Yes.
a harlot. Hieronymus the Egyptian is mentioned again, supposedly able to discern unclean or unchaste women just by their sight or voice, which resulted in him getting a headache. A woman perceiving her lover approaching when he was still 2 miles away. A flock of storks supposedly convicted one of their number of unchastity based on the smell detected by her mate and then tore her apart. A horse biting off its own testicles after unknowingly mating with its damn mother. A serpent supposedly killing its own young after learning somehow that the young had bitten the host's son who had cared for them.
Wow. These examples highlight a really deep, almost psychic level of connection and awareness attributed to both animals and humans within this framework, far beyond just simple instinct as we might define it today.
Absolutely. And the source also mentions observing similitude in making these conjectures, like how Virgil taught Aeneas to recognize Venus even when she was disguised. Finally, auguries taken from fires and flames in specific sacred locations are noted, like the fires in the Athenian caves or the fields of the nymphs in Apollonia. These fires were interpreted as joyful if they readily consumed offerings thrown into them, and sad or ill-omened if they rejected or failed to burn the offerings.
Okay. Moving into some of the even more esoteric, almost borderline claims near the end of these excerpts, the source actually touches on the possibility of reviving the dead. For real.
Chapter 58 discusses this, yes. It starts by noting the belief among certain Arabian philosophers that exceptionally advanced humans could elevate their souls above the body and the normal sensitive powers to receive a divine vigor directly from the heavens and the intelligences. Building on this, Magicians, Agrippa claims, believe that truly perfect men could potentially even repair recently deceased bodies using inferior souls newly separated, perhaps animal souls or lower aspects of the human soul, and inspire them again with life.
How could that possibly work?
The rationale given is based on the belief that souls are perpetual and immortal, and that spirits, including perhaps the vital spirit, will obey the commands of truly perfect, spiritually advanced souls.
He uses animal examples again as analogies for this, right?
Yes, citing instances like a killed weasel supposedly being revived by its dam's breath or cry, or lions reviving their apparently stillborn whelps simply by breathing on them for 3 days. The underlying principle invoked is again that like things being applied to their like are made of the same natures. It suggests a powerful sympathetic force where the agent, the perfect soul or the parent animal, imparts its own nature and vitality to the patient, the dying or dead body. The patient receives the agent's act and becomes endowed with the agent's nature.
What sort of things are claimed to actually conduce to this kind of vivification? What materials or methods?
Certain powerful herbs are mentioned, as well as specific magic confections. Even things as extreme as the ashes of the phoenix or the cast-off skin of a snake are suggested as potentially having this power. However, the source itself, Agrippa, admits that this idea seems fabulous, perhaps even impossible, unless it's supported by strong historical faith, meaning unless there are reliable historical accounts proving it happened.
And are there such historical claims cited in the text?
Yes, many examples are drawn from figures like Pliny, mentioning cases like Aviola, Lamia, Aesop, Tyndareus, Hercules, Palissy, and especially the healer god Aesculapius. Juba, Xanthus, and Philostratus are mentioned again in connection with revival stories involving figures like Tillo, an unnamed Arabian man, and Apollonius of Tyana. A specific claim is made about Glaucus being revived either by the dragonwort herb or, more simply, by taking in honey. The text literally says Glaucus was raised from death by taking in honey.
Raised from death by honey. That sounds almost like a folk remedy claim that got elevated into a philosophical text.
It does have that quality. Apuleius' detailed account of Zakla the Egyptian prophet reviving a dead youth is also recounted here. Zakla lays a specific herb on the mouth and breast of the dead youth, turns to face the east towards the rising sun, and offers a silent prayer. The youth's breast then begins to heave, his veins beat, his body fills with breath, the carcass arises, and the youth speaks.
So that involves a combination of herbal application, proper orientation towards the east sun, and silent prayer or invocation. But the source also offers a more, shall we say, grounded potential explanation for these apparent revivals, doesn't it?
Yes, it does provide an alternative interpretation. It suggests that many of these claimed instances of raising the dead might actually be cases where the dying souls were oppressed with vehement ecstasies. These individuals weren't truly biologically dead in the modern sense, but merely stunned in a state of deep shock or trance, appearing dead for a period, with life, sense, and motion having temporarily forsaken the body. He cites examples like people carried off to graves during plagues who later revived, women experiencing severe catatonic fits, perhaps related to hysteria, fits of the mother, a man who suffocated and lay seemingly dead for 6 days without food or drink, but whose arteries remained hard, a man filled with water who lost his pulse and lay like dead, someone falling from a height or stunned by a great noise who lay in a swoon for 48 hours with a green face, even a man buried alive who revived after 72 hours. He notes there were supposed signs to know if someone was truly dead or just appeared so, and that cures like phlebotomy, bloodletting, were sometimes needed, though he admits these cases of apparent death are rare.
So, mistaking deep comas, catatonic states, or other conditions that mimic death for actual death is presented as one possible, more rational explanation within this framework.
That interpretation is definitely offered. The source also notes the Marsi and Scilly tribes were known for their ability to restore those severely stung or bitten by serpents, which could involve reviving people from venom-induced paralysis or coma, a similar phenomenon. This idea also connects directly to claims made about prolonged sleep.
People sleeping for decades.
Like Rip Van Winkle.
Exactly like that. Ecstasies or deep trances, he says, can last for a very long time, even if they don't result in apparent death. He compares it to animals like dormice, crocodiles, and serpents that hibernate all winter, appearing almost dead and being very hard to wake. He mentions a dissected dormouse seeming dead until it was boiled.
Then he cites historical claims of humans sleeping for extraordinary periods, Pliny mentioning a boy who slept for 57 years in a cave. Epimenides Notius, the famous Cretan seer, also supposedly slept for 57 years in a cave, leading to the Greek proverb to outsleep Epimenides. M. Damascenus describes a countryman in Germany who fell asleep in the autumn under a haystack and slept through the entire winter, only being found in spring, half dead and completely out of his wits. The ecclesiastical histories are mentioned for the famous story of the seven sleepers of Ephesus, who supposedly slept for 196 years. And a cave in Norvegia, Norway, is mentioned, where similar long sleep supposedly occurs.
Extraordinary claims presented right alongside more plausible, though still highly unusual, natural phenomena like hibernation or deep comas. This leads us into the really significant role assigned to imagination and affection in Agrippa's system. This seems crucial.
Chapter 6 is absolute crucial here, yes. Agrippa makes the powerful assertion that imagination and affection, strong emotions or desires, especially when they are vehement and focused, possess the power to act not only upon one's own body, but also significantly upon another's body.
Like the well-known folk belief or observation about a pregnant woman's strong longing or fear affecting her unborn infant, leaving a birthmark related to the thing desired or feared.
That's the classic analogy he uses, yes. The source gives the example of a pregnant woman's intense longing marking the infant in her womb with the image or sign of the thing she craved. Monstrous or unusual births are also attributed to monstrous or powerful imaginations of pregnant women at the time of conception. He cites Marcus Damascenus telling the story of a hairy baby girl presented to Charles, king of Bohemia, whose mother had been deeply affected by the horror of looking at a particularly hairy picture of John the Baptist at the moment of conception.
Wow. Does this power of imagination to physically affect another extend to animals as well, in his view?
Yes, he gives the biblical example of Jacob using speckled rods placed before Laban's sheep during mating to influence the color patterns of the offspring. He also claims that peacocks or other birds, if they couple near a white cloth that's been hung up, will impress that color upon their wings, leading to the production of white peacocks.
So, strong mental states in the parent, or even powerful external visual stimuli during conception or gestation, are claimed to physically influence the outcome in offspring, or even unrelated animals nearby.
And this power is claimed to act directly from one person to another as well. The strong desire of witches to cause harm is said to bewitch men most perniciously, just through their steadfast looks, their focused gaze infecting the victim with evil intentions or effects. He cites respected philosophers like Avicen, Aristotle, Algazel, and even the physician Galen as agreeing that a healthy body can easily be affected by the vapor emanating from a diseased body, like catching the plague or leprosy. And similarly, that the vapor coming from the eyes can bewitch or infect others. He brings up the cockatrice or basilisk killing with their looks again, and those Scythian, Illyrian, and Tribalian women who supposedly killed with an angry look, mentioned for the third time, emphasizing the power of the gaze.
So the eyes are seen as a primary channel, not just for receiving information, but for projecting this powerful, infectious, imaginative, or emotional energy outward.
Exactly. And the mind's power, the focused affection or habitual state of a person's mind, is claimed to be even stronger and more pervasive than mere bodily vapors. It's far more powerful, strong, fervent, he says. It doesn't like mediums to travel through, presumably the air, the spiritus mundi, and other people's bodies are considered naturally subject to the influence of others' minds, especially strong minds.
So the advice that follows from this.
The practical advice given is to actively shun evil and mischievous men, because their soul is inherently full of these noxious rays or influences which infect their neighbors with a kind of spiritual contagion. Conversely, you should seek out the company of good and fortunate men, because their nearness alone doth much good. Like a bad smell or a pleasant perfume like musk, something of the badness or goodness of people is derived just by being near them, and this influence can continue long after the contact ends.
So who you associate with can literally physically and mentally affect you through this constant, subtle transfer of imaginative or emotional energy. And what if the mind is focused not on earthly things, but on God?
Agrippa claims this state of mind has an even much greater power. A mind fixed on God in divine contemplation can supposedly affect another person's body with a divine gift, like healing or prophecy. This, he suggests, is the underlying explanation for the miracles performed by figures like Apollonius, Pythagoras, Empedocles, Philolaus, and the ancient prophets. Their power came from their intense connection to the divine, focused through their minds.
So intention, focused emotion, and directed imagination are presented as incredibly potent magical tools within this framework, capable of influencing both the physical body and the spiritual state of oneself and others. Which brings us to the final major topic covered in these excerpts, the power of words and names. This seems like a culmination of many of these ideas.
Yes, Chapter 69 elaborates on this beautifully. He lays out a sequence. The mind first conceives things internally, then it brings them forth externally through voices and words, which he calls the birth brought forth. And finally, these can be fixed in writings. Now, he states that the proper names of things, their true names, are not just arbitrary labels. They are like certain rays of things, meaning they are somehow present everywhere at all times, and they actively keep or contain the essential power of the things they represent. They function like proper and living images of the things themselves.
So names aren't just pointers, they're like energetic imprints or living representations of the thing itself. That's a powerful idea.
It is. And the source claims that these names originally result or arise naturally for things according to the specific properties of the celestial influences that created them. They were initially given by God himself, who numbers the multitude of the stars, calling them all by their names. He also cites Christ, saying, "Your names are written in heaven," as further support for names having a divine origin and significance.
And Adam's role in naming.
Adam, as the first namer in Genesis, supposedly had perfect knowledge of the celestial influences and the true properties of all creatures. Therefore, he gave them names according to their natures, such that as he named anything, so the name of it was. These original, correctly assigned names, therefore, contain the wonderful powers of the things signified.
How are names made most efficacious? Is it just about knowing the true name?
Not entirely. He explains that every voice, every word, actually signifies in two ways simultaneously. First, it signifies through the inherent influence of the celestial harmony, the cosmic vibration or resonance it carries naturally. Second, it signifies to the imposition of man, the meaning assigned to it by human convention and agreement.
Okay, natural resonance plus human meaning.
Right. And a name or word becomes most efficacious, most powerful to act, when both these significations align perfectly, when the inherent natural harmony matches the intended human meaning. This gives the word a double virtue, both natural and arbitrary. It's then made most efficacious to act when it is uttered in the right place, at the right time, seriously, with focused intention, and directed upon matter that is itself rightly disposed or prepared to receive the influence.
So it's the perfect alignment of the word's inherent cosmic energy, the speaker's focused human will and understanding, and the proper context, time, place, receptive target, that truly unlocks the power contained within the name or word.
Exactly. He gives the example of Apollonius again. Apollonius supposedly inquired into the true name of a young married maid who had died, then pronounced some occult formula or name related to her true name, and she revived. This is from Philostratus. Another example given is a Roman siege rite.
What was that?
Before besieging an enemy city, the Romans would apparently try to discover this city's true secret name and also the name of its primary protector god. Then, using a specific magical verse, an evocatio, they would call forth the city's gods, promising them better worship in Rome and simultaneously curse the inhabitants. By drawing the gods away, they could overcome the city more easily. Virgil supposedly alludes to this practice.
So knowing and using the true name correctly could affect not just individuals, but entire cities and even their patron deities. Are sentences or verses considered more powerful than just single words or names?
Yes, the source states that the virtue of words is more confirmed and consolidated when they are structured into sentences that make affirmations or denials, things like verses, enchantments, prayers, or imprecations, curses.
How should one compose such verses for maximum effect, say, to attract the influence of a specific star or deity?
He gives guidelines. You must first consider the star's specific virtues, its known effects, and its operations in the world. You then incorporate these into your verse by praising, extolling, amplifying, and setting forth all the star's positive effects. You should also include lines that vilify or dispraise the things that the star naturally hinders or opposes. You need to supplicate clearly for what you desire to obtain, and condemn or detest whatever negative influence or outcome you wish to be destroyed or averted. The composition should be an elegant oration, with distinct articles or parts, and constructed according to specific numbers and proportions suitable to that star or deity.
And how do you actually invoke the stars or deities effectively using these compositions?
You call upon them by their known names, and also by the names of the intelligences, angels or spirits, that are believed to rule over those stars or spheres. You pray to them by referencing their wonderful things or miracles, by mentioning their courses and paths in their celestial sphere, by their light, by the dignity of their kingdom, by their beauty and brightness, and especially by their strong and powerful virtues and effects in the world. He gives the example of Psyche praying to the goddess Ceres in Apuleius's Metamorphoses, where she invokes Ceres by listing all her associations: her fruitful hand, harvest ceremonies, sacred chests, dragon chariots, the plowed furrows of Sicilian earth, her secret rites in cellars, her returns, and all the things hidden in her temples. It's a way of tuning into the deity's essence through its manifestations.
That makes sense.
Orpheus's hymns are specifically mentioned as being nothing is more efficacious in natural magic, provided they are used with the right accompanying circumstances, the due musical harmony, and focused attention. Intent.
How is the verse or enchantment actually delivered or applied to the target to make it efficacious? It's not just saying the words, right?
Right. The pronunciation is key. Verses that are aptly and duly made, full of meaning, and pronounced at the opportune time with vehement affection, strong emotion, and intent, according to the correct number, proportion, and form of their parts, and crucially, powered by the violence of imagination, are said to confer very great power in the enchanter, the speaker. This power is then actively transferred to the thing being enchanted.
Transferred how? What's the medium?
The instrument for this transfer is described as the enchanter's breath or spirit specifically. A most pure harmonical spirit, warm, breathing, living, bringing with it motion, affection, and signification. This spirit is composed of parts, endued with sense and conceived by reason. Magicians are said to blow and breath upon them to target the words of the verse, or to breath in the virtue with the spirit, actively directing the whole virtue of the soul, carried on the breath and voice towards the object being enchanted.
So you're literally breathing your intention and the power of the words onto the target.
That's the method described. And Agrippa claims that poets and philosophers throughout history agree that wonderful things can be done by verses, removing corn magically from one field to another, commanding lightning, curing diseases. He mentions Cato the Elder supposedly using enchantments against diseases in his cattle. Josephus claimed King Solomon was highly skilled in these arts. Celsus Africanus wrote that Egyptian doctrine included enchantments performed by 36 spirits, corresponding to the 36 decans or faces of the zodiac, each with peculiar voices, used to heal specific parts of the human body, corresponding to that decan.
And the source wraps up this powerful section with that quote from Ovid's Enchantress Medea, boasting about the immense power she wields through her spells and charms.
Yes, that quote really highlights the perceived scope of this power when fully mastered, according to the tradition Agrippa is drawing on. She claims she can, at will, make swift streams retire, sea toss and smooth, clear clouds with clouds deform. With spells and charms I break the viper's jaw, whole woods remove, make earth for to groan and ghosts from graves awake, and thee, O moon, I draw. Pull the moon down from the sky. Is presented as the ultimate culmination of the power inherent in rightly understood and vehemently applied words, names, and verses within this magical system.
Well, that was truly a deep dive into a remarkable and incredibly complex historical text. We've journeyed all the way from Agrippa's foundational idea of this multi-level universe where divine and celestial influences flow down through this intricate chain of correspondences, all the way down to the detailed and often really startling virtues he attributed to the elements and all sorts of natural things, whether those were simple elementary qualities, more complex compounded ones, or those truly mysterious hidden occult properties.
And we've explored the claimed methods for actually engaging with these powers. How you're supposed to align yourself with celestial influences using specific materials and timings, how you might create artificial mixtures imbued with potent virtues, even the really radical idea of preparing matter itself to receive life or more noble forms.
Yeah.
The use of invisible attraction methods like perfumes and fumes to influence the air, spirits, and ourselves. The whole concept of magical bindings and sorceries that utilize everything from mundane objects to really powerful and sometimes quite disturbing natural substances like menstruous blood or specific animal parts.
And we delved into those more subtle but equally potent forces Agrippa describes. The power that places themselves can retain, the huge significance given to omens and auguries derived from animals and even other human beings, all supposedly rooted in a deep natural instinct.
Right.
And finally, that incredible power attributed to human imagination, focused affection, sheer intention, and ultimately the potent application of the right words and names structured into verses, enchantments, and invocations.
Our mission, really, was to unpack the core ideas presented in these specific excerpts and try to understand Agrippa's claimed framework for how reality worked from his perspective. And we've certainly seen how he attempted to build this comprehensive, almost scientific system, although based on principles totally alien to modern science.
Definitely.
But a system rooted in the fundamental belief that understanding the universe's hidden connections, its sympathies and antipathies, and its intricate links to higher realms, could actually unlock extraordinary abilities and provide a practical means to operate effectively within that vast cosmic network.
It really does give you a profound glimpse into a historical worldview, where the boundaries between things we now rigidly separate, like physics, biology, astrology, psychology, maybe even theology and magic, were just completely fluid and deeply interconnected.
Hmm.
The universe wasn't seen as just a collection of inert objects governed by simple mechanical laws. It was viewed as this vast, living, energetic web of sympathies and influences. Something not just to be passively observed, but to be actively explored, understood, and, as Agrippa boldly claimed, potentially manipulated. It's a world that feels incredibly foreign from our modern, maybe more disenchanted perspective.
Yet it's a worldview that held a powerful sway over the minds of brilliant thinkers for centuries, and you can still feel its echoes today in various cultural beliefs and esoteric traditions.
Absolutely. So here's maybe a provocative thought for you, the listener, to take away from this deep dive today. Consider how fundamentally our modern scientific understanding insists on purely observable, measurable phenomena and material cause and effect. What might we be overlooking? What possibilities might lie just beyond our current methods of perception and measurement if there are indeed deeper, less obvious connections, sympathies, influences, correspondences woven into the very fabric of reality that our current tools simply aren't equipped to detect or validate? And maybe, what does this enduring human fascination across cultures and centuries with hidden powers, secret connections, and the potential for the mind, the body, or even just words to influence the world around us? What does that fascination tell us about ourselves? About our perceived limitations, perhaps, or our deepest aspirations within this vast and still deeply mysterious cosmos we inhabit?
Keep exploring. Keep asking those questions that push the
Let's
boundaries.
keep diving deep.